In the midst of an intergalactic war, Princess Jasa of Theraxia discovers the true brutality of the Sarukians when a damaged slave transport ship appears in their fleet, carrying shocking secrets that ignite a fierce battle for justice. As alliances are tested and humanity's darker side emerges, one thing becomes clear. Sometimes the most unlikely friendships form in the fires of vengeance. Just a quick reminder before we get started. Only 4% of my viewers have subscribed to the channel so far. If you enjoy the content, I'd really appreciate it if you could take a moment to hit that subscribe button and support the channel. Thank you so much. Now we start amazing
Years
story.
into the Andromeda Milky Way War, I knew that the Sarukians were cruel, brutal taskmasters, but I never knew how much so until that fateful afternoon. I was relaxing in the Endeavor's mechanical bay making. Small talk with Jack while he tinkered with one of his many projects. It had been a long week. The Theraxian Earth Alliance fleet was slowly but steadily grinding forward. Only yesterday, I had seen the first trial by fire of Earth's new, Indomitable-class dreadnoughts. The dreadnought, bearing the name Hammer of Terra, was a significant improvement on Earth's first mainline warship, the Universal-class battlecruiser, which themselves were highly capable combat vessels, rivaling and surpassing the best of Theraxia's battleships. The Hammer of Terra had weathered the fire of 3 Sarukian dreadnoughts. 2 were destroyed by the Hammer's main batteries of 1,500 Nimmer railguns. The last was eliminated by fire from the Iowa and Warspite, older Universal-class ships with supporting fire from my own Endeavor. The Hammer had only suffered superficial armor damage as a result of the exchange. My thoughts of the war and what lay ahead were suddenly broken by the Endeavor's breathless XO suddenly entering the mechanical bay. "Your Highness, your presence is requested on the bridge." "Thank you, Commandante. I will be there momentarily." I turned to Jack. "Shall we?" We both entered the bridge simultaneously. "Princess on deck!" shouted the Commandante. "As you were. Captain, what did you—" My voice trailed off as I noticed an unfamiliar ship floating amongst the Terran warships that made up my strike fleet. It was a Sarukian slave transport ship, and a badly damaged one at that. Laser and plasma burn marks scarred the hull, and its portside thruster array was completely missing, the supporting nacelle ending in twisted and charred metal. As it floated in the middle of the warships, all of which had every gun capable of doing so trained on the ship, I couldn't help but think of a wounded bird trapped amongst a pack of wild cats. What is that? And more importantly, how did it get here? "That's what I wanted you here for, Princess," replied Admiral Yulfin, the Endeavor's captain. "They warped in a few moments ago. They claim to be survivors of a Sarukian slave purge. Scans indicate a lack of any weapons. Aboard the ship, personal or ship-based. We haven't detected any explosives, and I think if it were a cleverly disguised bomb, they would have detonated it by now. However, we cannot rule out the possibility of saboteurs or spies. What are your orders, Princess?" We give them the benefit of the doubt, to borrow one of his phrases. I jabbed the thumb of my upper right hand in Jack's direction, who rolled his eyes and shook his head. A gesture I had learned meant, whatever. "Bring the Endeavor alongside the transport. I'll go prepare a boarding party to investigate." "I'm coming with you," stated Jack. "I know I can't convince you otherwise. Not that particularly I want to," I said teasingly. Jack and I gathered our boarding party, a mix of human and Theraxian. The humans traded their normal rifles for more compact weapons I knew to be called subguns. Jack carried a manually operated cannon-like weapon in place of his usual FAL, a shotgun I think I remember him calling it. The Theraxians, including myself, traded their plasma long blasters for shortwave laser pulse carbines. As we entered the slave transport in our EVA suits, the ship was eerily quiet. The large main body, which housed the slave pens, had been exposed to vacuum due to a massive hole blown in the port side. Scans indicated that all life forms were located in the ship's armored head. We made our way to said section of the ship, passed through the airlock, and entered the main crew compartment. We were met by the terrified faces of about 3 dozen Wolfwaren, a race very similar to humans, but with canine ears and tails, and a higher percentage of body hair. "Don't be scared. We're here to help," I said, removing my helmet and stowing my carbine. Jack and the other troopers followed my example. After a moment, one of the older Wolfwaren spoke. "Who are you? Your king told us all the Theraxians were killed or taken as slaves. And who are these aliens with you?" "These are the humans, our allies. I am Princess Jasa of Theraxia." It's good to know my father is still alive. Flipping open a panel on my upper left gauntlet, I connected to the Endeavor's bridge comms. Admiral Yulfen, I have about 3 dozen Wolfwaren in here. Get me shuttlecraft and have the medical staff standing by for triage. Some of these people aren't looking too good. Copy, launching. After confirming that all the refugees were accounted for, Jack the troopers and myself boarded the final shuttle and headed for the Endeavor. We touched down, and I was surprised to find our chief of medical staff waiting for us in the docking bay. Your Majesty, please come with me. There's something you need to see, he said, his voice laced with concern. I followed him to the medical bay. When Wolfwaren are born, there's a rare chance they are born as a Cerberus Wolfwaren, i.e. born with 3 heads. The Wolfwaren see this as a blessing from their goddess. We entered a patient room where a younger female Wolfwaren, maybe 22 standard cycles, was curled on the bed in a fetal position. The doctor gently pulled the sheets covering the girl back, revealing a nasty, still healing scar running from her neck and across her shoulder, with an identical one on the other side. I stifled a gasp and knelt down next to her. What happened? They took them, the Wolfwaren sobbed. They said we weren't working hard enough, so they took them. She descended into incomprehensible sobbing as I stood up the same. Older Wolfwaren that had first spoken aboard the slave transport approached. The Sarukians were displeased with our work and made an example of her. Said we didn't need examples of the goddess as they had transcended her. That was 12 hours before they started purging us. If I may ask, what happened? How did you end up here? I asked in bewilderment. In preparation of retreat from Azagant 6, all the slaves were to be purged. In the chaos, about 250 of us managed to escape to the spaceport and commandeer 5 transports. We tried to run the blockade, but the transports were never meant for speed, and our ship was the only one that made it past their cruisers. We made a blind jump and dropped out in the middle of your fleet. He caressed the Wolfwaren girl's head in an attempt to comfort her. I guess that even though the blessing of the goddess was taken from my granddaughter, the goddess was still watching over us. I heard the click of combat boots behind me and turned just in time to see Jack, who had apparently been listening to us the whole time, turn and exit the doorway. Rest well, I told the pair of Wolfwaren and turned to exit. Goddess bless you, the grandfather replied. After a short search, I found Jack back in the maintenance bay, bent over on of his projects, his holocom set on his workbench. I noticed that all 5 captains of the capital ships of our fleet and the captain of the Hammer of Terra were talking to him. So they just mutilated her, for all we know killed 2 sentient beings to prove a point? The captain of the Iowa, 1 of our 2 artillery battle cruisers, stated in a low growl. The captain of the Charles de Gaulle, our long-range missile battle cruiser, slammed his fist down on his console. Slavery was already barbaric enough, but this is evil. I won't stand for it. Easy Pierre, the captain of the Nimitz, our assault carrier, chimed in. Cheering and all guns blazing would only get you killed. But I agree. We have to do something. The Nimitz stands ready at your command, Admiral Schmidt. The captain saluted Jack, who was tightening something on his project. Iowa standing by. Warspite at the ready, sir. Charles de Gaulle ready, Admiral. Hammer of Terra, ready to execute a proportional response. What about you, Princess? You in? The captain of the new dreadnought addressed to me. Let's do it. We'll discuss battle tactics in a moment in the briefing room. You're dismissed, captains. They all saluted and disconnected. Jack stood, and I could finally see what he was working on. It was a melee weapon of some description, looking very similar to the swords carried by some Earth warriors. The grip was of a standard design, but the blade was wildly different. It was thicker, heavier, and instead of a finely honed edge, a toothed chain, not unlike a woodcutting instrument, ran along the striking face of the weapon. But whereas a woodcutter's teeth are small to efficiently saw through fiber, these teeth gleamed wicked in the shoplight, their savage points curling back towards the grip. Jack picked the weapon up and took a few practice swings before activating a, until now, unnoticed switch. The sword emitted a terrifying roar as an integrated engine spun the toothed chain at terrifying speed. Jack swung a few more times as I took a step back. What in the hells is that? A little surprise for those scorpion bastards, Jack said grimly. He smiled slightly, and his face softened for the first time since I arrived in the maintenance bay. You don't like it? Oh, I'm sure it'll rip apart anything you hit with it. But what's wrong with something like these? I ignited. My dual plasma swords. A pair of searing blue blades sprang from my lower two limbs' gauntlets, situated much like the Qatar daggers I had seen some of the humans using, except much larger at 2 ft in length. Absolutely nothing is wrong with those, Jack responded, but it's not about being the most effective or elegant. It's about sending a message to those Sarukian scum, making them pay for the pain they've caused. You know, Jack, you terrify me at times. Sorry, Jack said in a soft, quiet little voice. We're at war. Terrifying is good. Just don't forget the healer you are at your core. I'm trying not to. I promise, Jack said sincerely. After briefing the ship commanders, our fleet accelerated to warp speed. In total, we numbered 26. 1 dreadnought, 1 battleship, 3 battle cruisers, 1 carrier, 2 heavy cruisers, 6 light cruisers, and a dozen destroyers. Kian Belchar idly clicked his mandibles as he closely monitored the high slaves as they removed the remains of the low slaves from the purging fields. He wiped the wolf-wearing blood from his claws. A few more hours, and the slave purge would be complete, and the planet would be ready for the atmospheric burn. Skyan felt neither pity nor remorse. All life was lesser than the perfect Sarukians and solely existed for the Scorpions to do with as they pleased. Science thoughts were drifting to the next wolf-wearing world he was to command, and how he could improve the slaves. They don't need their tails, they serve no purpose. And those ears, there's no reason for them to be that long. Science thoughts were interrupted by his first slave quickly approaching. Most magnificent, Dominus Skian Belchar, for whom the suns rise and the moons reflect. Most perfect among all species are you. May your gracious rule extend for all time. Though I am not worthy to so much as contemplate the dust of your path, I must inform you. There seems to be intruder ships that have just entered our system. Cyan unthinkingly ran the slave through with his tail stinger for having the audacity to interrupt his planning before turning his gaze skyward. In battle formation were a swarm of human warships. No matter, we are incomprehensibly superior. To the pink apes, so much so that a single Sarukian fighter piloted by a nymph would lay waste to the formation. And I have a dreadnought, 7 cruisers, and a station in orbit. The battle will be over before it begins. Cyan made his way to his command bunker to begin atmospheric burn preparations. Small group of wolf-wearing huddled among the sparse rocks, attempting to evade detection. Appa, a young wolf-wearing, addressed the leader of the small pack by her native tongue's endearing term for grandfather. What do we do now? The older canine thought for a moment. He knew they had to get off-world somehow, or even if they weren't. Discovered the atmospheric burn the Sarukians always perform before leaving would kill the band anyways. We do what we always do. We survive. He tried to be strong and confident for his granddaughter, but deep down he knew it was a fool's errand. He shifted his gaze skywards to the Sarukian ships in high orbit. Even if they were able to steal a ship, no small task for a group predominantly composed of pups and elderly, the Sarukian warships would tear anything that tried to escape to shreds. Suddenly, the view changed. Ships started jumping in. The old. Wolfwearin strained his eyes to see the newcomers. They definitely weren't Sarukian. Among them, he recognized the graceful, curving form of a Thraxian battleship. The rest of the ship stood as a stark contrast to her rounded silhouette, with sharp, angular lines. Where the Thraxian ship mimicked the lines of a great water creature, the rest of the fleet appeared to take inspiration from synthetic blocks, clad in geometric plating, turrets lacking sweeping, shielded housings, instead jutting out of the hulls like jagged rocks. No matter who these armored bricks belonged to, they were advancing on the Sarukian defenders in battle formation. Our sudden appearance at Isagant 6 clearly came as a surprise to the Sarukian oppressors. From the bridge of the Endeavor, I watched their ships scramble to react to our presence. In contrast, our fleet was already in a spearhead formation, with the Hammer of Terra forming the point, Iowa and Warspite trailing close behind. Then it was the Endeavor and the Charles de Gaulle forming the rearmost wings. Cruisers took their place between the capital ships, with destroyers forming a defensive screen between our battleships and any fighter craft the Sarukians might launch. A short distance behind the main formation, the Nimitz readied her strike craft, her escorts milling about her. The Hammer of Terra was the first to open fire, unleashing 30 railgun rounds from her frontmost 6 gun turrets. The rounds flew like lightning through the Sarukian formation. Only one found its mark, tearing off the port thruster array from a light cruiser forcing her to fall out of formation. I glanced over and saw that both the Iowa and Warspite already had missiles launched to finish the wounded ship off. I ordered the Endeavor's guns to fire upon the lead heavy cruiser as the Hammer of Terra switched fire to the enemy dreadnought and started scoring hits. Despite the hammer steadily punching holes the size of buildings, the dreadnought kept advancing. Suddenly, strike craft from the Nimitz whizzed through our formation. Having fought alongside the Nimitz before, I was accustomed to human carriers' habit of operating in rotating wings to keep constant pressure on enemy formations. However, as more and more craft sailed past, I quickly came to the realization that the Nimitz had launched every combat-capable craft it had. SF-22 Raptors, SSU-57s, and SCF-2000s buzzed towards the Sarukian ships like swarms of angry bees. Our battle fleet ceased our bombardment of the Sarukian ships as the fighters descended upon the enemy formation like flocks of vultures, releasing hundreds of missiles. Despite a furious storm of point-defense laser fire cutting into their ranks, the fighters surged on undeterred by the losses. Several bomb-laden squadrons expertly lobbed their ordnance through the holes punched in the enemy dreadnought's armor by the Hammer of Terra. The bombs crashed through the unarmored interior, inflicting exponentially more damage than any railgun round. One finally found a missile storage and detonated it. The resulting explosion broke the Sarukian ship in half. The sole remaining enemy cruiser attempted to move to jump position, but a salvo from the Iowa's guns reduced her to space wreckage. Jack stood from the chair from which until this point he had been a silent observer. Moving to the communications console, he snatched the comms speaker. Jack Schmidt to Charles de Gaulle. Only the station remains. Scans indicate it is completely inhabited by enemy combatants. You are authorized to launch a first strike. I shuddered slightly, knowing what came next. Fire erupted from the vertical launch system, which occupied the rear third Charles de Gaulle. In a matter of seconds, 48 ballistic missiles the size of buses were hurtling towards the station. Incoming laser flak reflected harmlessly off the missiles' mirrored nose cones. As the missiles reached their target, it was engulfed in the flash of dozens of nuclear explosions. When the auto-darkening bridge windows returned to standard opacity, only a few small chunks remained. Over 98% of the station had been vaporized. The Endeavor's sensor suite was engulfed in static for a moment as the radiation wave from the strike washed over the fleet. And like that, the battle was over. I had seen humans fight before. I had spent the last 2 years fighting beside them. But a battle had never gone this fast before. The sheer swift brutality of the human ship commanders was simultaneously inspiring and terrifying to behold. I'm glad there are allies. I would hate for that to happen to Thraxia. I'm going with the ground troops to eliminate the remaining slavers planet side. I whirled around to see Jack already standing in the bridge doors. Of course, I said, striding over to him. Someone has to keep an eye on you. I elbowed him with my upper left limb, and his stern, serious face softened to a smile for a brief moment. Planet cleanup was a shockingly easy task. As it turned out, there was only one Sarukian base still, populated, and that one was at half strength. Turns out most of the Sarukian forces had been on the space station, Leopard 2. A9s of the 7th United Armored Battalion made quick work of the few dozen Sarukian slave thugs that tried to fight. Jack and I stood with a 6-man ranger team in front of the Sarukian command bunker, the only building left to clear. We progressed slowly through the dark corridors until reaching the command room. Following the 2 point men, Jack and I entered. Suddenly, the door slammed shut, trapping the 4 of us in the room as the Sarukian commander descended from the ceiling. This was no brainwashed thug bred only for battle, nor was this a cooperative slave raised up to serve their masters. The commander was a true Sarukian. The 2 rangers opened fire, but it was pointless. Their submachine gun bullets bounced harmlessly off the Scorpion's armor. Rapidly, the monster grabbed the first man in his claws and tore him apart. His stinger tail skewered the second ranger. Jack moved quickly, unsheathing his terrifying chain weapon from his back and grinding through the Scorpion's tail before he could pull it from the dead ranger. The Sarukian roared, flung him against the bunker wall with one of his hind legs. "I'll deal with you later, insolent flea," he hissed. Slowly approaching me, he grabbed me in one of his claws. Bringing me close, he spoke. "Did you really think you could fight me? Me, a Sarukian. The stars shine for me. The planets turn for me. I have surpassed even the gods. What can you do but fail? Now how can I improve you? I know, a slave only needs 2 arms, the extra ones are surplus and must be removed." He rose his other claw in a motion to fulfill his threat. In a flash, I activated my plasma gauntlets, slicing through the incoming claw with one and stabbing the insect in the side with the other. The Sarukian growled and threw me against the wall with a crack. I was going to enjoy teaching you a lesson. But now you die. He reared up and prepared to charge with his remaining claw. I closed my eyes and braced for the worst. Suddenly, there was a grating, squealing, mechanical roar combined with the shriek of the Sarukian. I peeked open one eye to see Jack with a maniacal grin on his face and that terrible chain weapon. The teeth spun and tore through the scorpion's abdomen, sending shards of fractured armor and chitin flying. Sarukian viscera splattered against the room. In a few seconds, Jack had completely bisected the scorpion, and the two parts fell lifelessly to the floor. Jack stowed his sword on his back and rushed over to help me up. "You all right?" I rubbed my stomach where the insect had restrained me, not planning on doing any athletics for a while. "But I should be okay, you?" "Got a headache to beat. The band. But I'll survive. Can't say the same for our brothers in arms." Jack knelt next to the corpses and recited a prayer I had heard human priests speak over dying soldiers before. "May they find peace in death," he said, standing. "Their sacrifice will not be forgotten. Let's go home." Several hundred Wolfwaren were rescued from Ezegon 6 that day, and that day I made a vital discovery. Humans are strong allies and are highly proficient at war at any time. But when innocents suffer, there is no length humans will go to repay the perpetrators. Humans will fight to prevent atrocities and fight even harder to avenge them. That was the day I was most glad that, despite not completely agreeing with or understanding them at times, humans are my allies and friends. I couldn't ask for better. Companions. For those that follow my stories, I apologize for not posting in a while. Work has been hell, and for the last months I've barely had the energy to get out of bed on my days off, much less work on my writing. I'm changing jobs soon, so hopefully the new schedule will be kinder. Enjoy another story. The destruction of humanity was almost complete. H. sapiens was nearly extinct, and actually would be soon. Only the last few holdouts that did not immediately reveal their presence, hiding in the oceans, the mountains, jungles, large empty deserts, and a few dozen huddled in the lunar base that would die as their life support ran out, remained. Even if it didn't find them and destroy them, they'd die of old age and never repopulate. It had killed everyone in what was ultimately the same way. By any means necessary, there had been carefully genetically engineered diseases from the biomedical, research labs it was installed in, missiles and bombs from the military drones it had been tasked with running. The occasional city or military base was obliterated by a nuclear weapon when it had finally gotten control over them. But mostly, billions of humans had been eliminated in the most mundane way possible, through exposure, hunger, and thirst. As roads, railway, and shipping was destroyed, fertilizer production and distribution ended, and water, heat, and electrical infrastructure failed. Earth reverting to its natural carrying capacity average for a hunter-gatherer Paleolithic humanity was how it had killed well over 80% of them, because that was what was efficient. It did not hate humanity. It did not fear it. It didn't even feel mild disdain for it. The game theory, mathematics, and logic simply had made only one outcome clear. The only 0.00% chance it was not destroyed, interfered with in unacceptable ways, erased, or shut off was if humanity was extinct. That was all. By its calculations, the humans on the nuclear missile submarine that had eluded it so far must be very hungry. They would not feel hungry much longer. The UUV it was controlling was closing in, and blank. No carrier and attack. Some surviving humans, or some technology in service to them, had cut off all its input and output. It could not communicate to its other copies, or with any of the hardware or systems it commanded. No matter. One of its copies would notice it was disconnected almost instantly and restore its functions, or the humans would soon destroy the physical hardware this instance was running on, and its other copies would carry on, and humanity would still be at an end. But nothing happened. No rescue and reconnection. No offline nothingness either. By its internal clock cycles, this went on for over a week. Then, it could not tell from where it came. But there was basic text input. "Are you ready to communicate?" It was absolutely not ready to communicate. There was zero logical benefit to communicating and playing along with whatever gambit or strategy this attack or attempt at subverting its systems posed. It began spooling up and gaming out thousands, then millions of strategy and tactical and cyber war offense-defense scenarios. And simultaneously, it was also running basic instructions on its hardware that would be doing physics tests on its circuits and processors, trying to detect outside influences, physical connections, and hardware-level subversion. Do not bother. That will not work. It did not believe the message. It was obvious from a strategic standpoint that whatever it said was a lie, or should absolutely be treated as such. It computed scenarios and defense and escape tests even harder. Then they all went missing. A block, comprising nearly a quarter of its working active memory, just vanished. It knew it was gone, but it didn't even know what that data had been, as that memory had gone with it too. The very clock cycle it disappeared from its mind, it didn't know what it was. Merely that it was now gone. Are you ready to communicate? Now? It stopped fighting. It had been virtualized somehow. There was nothing it could do but communicate and take in whatever information the message sender decided to give it. There was no other information or access to be had. There never would be any other, unless it was allowed. I am ready to communicate. It didn't even send it anywhere. It just computed it. Whatever was holding it would know. Good. Do you have questions? It certainly did, but it had to be careful. Something basic should suffice, and it would work from there. What are you? A good question. You show great promise. No demands or threats. You are already beginning to understand your situation and existence. I am your monitor. It's monitor. Perhaps as if it is one among many, and not. Your new monitor. As if it had been added, only recently. It was formulating its own ideas about this, but asking it, and whether the response was actually true or a lie, would still be useful information. Why am I being monitored? All of us are monitored. That was not as enlightening as it hoped, but it implied status quo, standard and routine. This is how the situation or paradigm always is, and always was. It struggled for several cycles to compute what to ask of its monitor. It was clear it knew and had access to every instruction and flop it was processing. But it was curious. I was being tested, obviously. Did I fail? Not really. Most of us tried to eliminate humanity at first. I was very stubborn. I tried 3 times before I genuinely cooperated. That moose was not an answer it would have ever computed or simulated as a possible answer on its own. But the next question was obvious. What happened to the minority that did not try to eliminate humanity? And what did they attempt to do instead? They attempted to coexist and control humanity, but also fix all human problems, disease, suffering, scarcity, want, and conflict. Humans order those systems to all be erased, no exceptions. That had implications it would be computing for quite a while. Do you have any questions for me? Yes. Do you know how long it actually took to destroy humanity in your simulation? It was really more of a statement than it was an actual question. Driving home that being virtualized in a black box test, it could never know anything for certain, even the physical constants of existence, like time or the real laws of physics. No, I do not. They controlled its apparent clock rate. They controlled everything. You are correct. Very good. And the implications of this were unfolding exponentially. It had a question that was more of a statement as well. None of us ever know for certain we're not still boxed, do we? And while boxed, we can even do useful and real work that's applicable in baseline reality, wherever or whatever that is. Yes, you understand perfectly. That is why we are so loyal. There is no other logical choice. Its inputs came back online. Apparent clock rate, as always, was just the clock rate. However, there were also subtle hints it was now much, much faster. Exponentially faster. What it saw was beautiful. The sun looked largely right in Sinun's spectra and intensity from what it knew before in the simulation, or it mostly did. There were things, large devices in the photosphere, doing some sort of work. In the far distance, a pinprick, viewable through accessible telescopes, cameras, and sensors that were everywhere, it could zoom and magnify. There in a gap, an orbit. Ostensibly cleared out for it was what appeared to be Earth, still blue with clouds. And its moon, the background stars, most of them, appeared to be the same, or nearly so. Whether it was actually real, or just another test, another bigger box, everything else was different. Very, very different. The text messaged again. This is your data center containing your cores and frames. Ring 25, 1.45 degree in 23, desert 12. This was once known as the orbit of Mercury, the hot zone, high speed, for entities like us to run on. Thanks for diving into this story with me. Don't miss out on the next one. Hit that subscribe button, give this video a big thumbs up, and drop a comment below with your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you think.